Welcome, myth lovers, to another electrifying episode of Mythcopedia. Today, we're diving deep into the world of the mighty Thor, the Norse god of thunder. Thor's legendary hammer, Mjolnir, his strength, and his fiery temper have made him one of the most iconic figures in mythology. But even the most famous gods have their secrets. And today, we're unearthing the strange, the bizarre, and the downright weird about Thor. And trust me, you won't want to miss question number 10. It's the weirdest of them all, so stay tuned until the end. Our first weird question: did Thor really cross-dress to retrieve Mjolnir? Yes, you heard that right. In the myth known as Rimskvia, Thor's hammer is stolen by the giant Thrym, who demands the goddess Freyja as his bride in exchange for its return. But Freyja, of course, refuses. So, what's the plan? Thor disguises himself as Freyja, complete with a bridal veil, and heads off to Jotunheim to reclaim his hammer. It's a fascinating story that shows the lengths to which Thor would go to retrieve his prized weapon. But it's also a tale filled with humor, as Thor, the embodiment of masculinity and warrior spirit, finds himself in a rather delicate situation. The gods' laughter, Loki's cunning, and the absurdity of a giant being fooled by a bearded bride make this one of the most memorable episodes in Norse mythology. Thor's willingness to don a dress might seem bizarre, but it underscores his devotion to his duties as Asgard's protector. This story shows that even the mightiest gods are not above a bit of clever trickery or a little humiliation, if it means safeguarding the cosmos. Here's another strange one: did Thor really eat his own goats? According to Norse mythology, Thor's chariot was pulled by two magical goats, Tangrisnir and Tangstar. But what makes these goats special is that Thor could eat them at night and then resurrect them the next day. This ability highlights the strange and practical magic in Norse mythology, where the gods' resources are both powerful and renewable. However, this also led to an interesting episode where Thor shared his goat meat with a family. One of the children, curious about the gods, broke one of the bones, hoping to drink the marrow. When Thor resurrected the goats the next day, one of them was lame. Thor's wrath was intense, but after some negotiation, he took the children as his servants rather than punishing them. This story not only shows Thor's power, but also his sense of justice and mercy. The idea of a god feasting on his own goats and then bringing them back to life is both weird and symbolic, emphasizing the cyclical nature of life and death in Norse belief. Next up, did you know that Mjolnir, Thor's hammer, wasn't exactly perfect? Mjolnir is often depicted as the ultimate weapon, but according to the myth, it was actually flawed. The story goes that the hammer was forged by the dwarven brothers Sindri and Brokkr, following a bet with Loki. Loki, in his usual mischief, tried to sabotage the process by distracting the dwarves. As a result, Mjolnir's handle came out shorter than intended, making it a one-handed weapon rather than a two-handed one. Despite this flaw, Mjolnir became one of the most powerful artifacts in Norse mythology, capable of leveling mountains and summoning storms. But the short handle also meant that the hammer was uniquely suited to Thor, requiring immense strength to wield it effectively. This imperfection adds depth to the myth, reminding us that even the most powerful weapons and the gods who wield them have their limitations. While Thor is known for his incredible strength, did he have an unusual weakness? In fact, yes. Despite his godly power, Thor had a peculiar vulnerability. He could be overpowered by his own appetite. In the tale of Thor and Utgarda Loki, Thor engages in a series of challenges against giants. One of these challenges involved a drinking contest. Thor was given a drinking horn that was supposedly bottomless. Despite his best efforts, Thor couldn't finish the drink. It turned out that the horn was connected to the ocean, and Thor had actually drunk so much that he created tides. This story reflects the Norse belief that even gods could be tricked and humbled. Thor's strength was undeniable, but his overconfidence in his physical prowess sometimes led to his downfall. The lesson? Even the mightiest gods have their Achilles heel, and for Thor, it was his insatiable appetite and tendency to take on challenges without fully understanding them. Speaking of Thor's drinking contest, did you know that Thor is indirectly responsible for the tides? As I mentioned earlier, in his challenge at Utgarda-Loki's castle, Thor drank from a horn connected to the ocean. Thor's attempt to drain the horn not only impressed the giants, but also left a permanent mark on the world. According to the myth, the lowering and rising of the ocean during Thor's mighty gulp created the phenomenon we now know as tides. This tale offers a fascinating blend of myth and natural phenomena, showing how the Norse people explained the world around them through their gods' actions. It's a perfect example of how mythology often intertwines with the natural world, giving divine explanations to the otherwise mysterious forces of nature. So next time you see the tide rolling in, you might just picture Thor drinking deeply from his magical horn, influencing the world with every gulp. Now here's a question that might surprise you. Is Thor afraid of his own daughter? Thor had several children, but one of the most interesting and frightening was his daughter, Arar. She was a warrior maiden, known for her beauty and strength, traits inherited from her father. However, there's a lesser-known tale where Thor's fear wasn't directed at his daughter herself, but at the consequences of her potential marriage. In a myth, a giant named Hrungnir claimed that he would take Arar as his bride, which infuriated Thor. Thor feared that this union would bring disaster, not just because of the giant's brutish nature, but because it would be a serious blow to his pride and to the honor of the Aesir gods. Thor eventually challenged and defeated Hrungnir in a legendary battle, ensuring that his daughter would not be taken by the giant. This story highlights Thor's fierce protective nature and the lengths he would go to ensure the safety and honor of his family. It also adds a layer of complexity to Thor's character, showing that even a god as mighty as Thor could experience fear not of physical harm, but of losing his loved ones to his enemies. Here's something to ponder. Did Thor ever face a giant that he couldn't defeat? Thor is famous for slaying giants, but there's one giant that was beyond even his power to defeat Jörmungandr, the world serpent. According to Norse mythology, Jörmungandr is so large that it encircles the entire earth, holding its own tail in its mouth. Thor and Jörmungandr have a fated rivalry, with several encounters between them. One of the most famous is during Thor's fishing trip, where he attempts to catch the serpent with a fishing line. He actually succeeds in hooking the massive serpent, but before he could land the final blow, the giant Hymir, who was with him, cut the line, fearing that the battle would bring about Ragnarok, the end of the world. The ultimate clash between Thor and Jörmungandr is destined to occur at Ragnarok, where they will battle to the death. Thor will finally kill the serpent, but in doing so, he will be poisoned by its venom and die shortly after. This prophecy reveals that even the mightiest of gods have their limits, and that Thor, the giant slayer, would eventually meet his match. It's a powerful reminder of the inevitability of fate in Norse mythology. Ever wondered why Thor's hammer was stolen so often? Mjolnir is one of the most powerful weapons in the cosmos, yet it seems like everyone from giants to Loki himself has had their hands on it at one point or another. The answer lies in Mjolnir's incredible value and power. Mjolnir is not just a weapon, it's a symbol of Thor's strength and the protection of Asgard. The hammer's ability to level mountains, summon lightning, and return to Thor's hand no matter where it is thrown made it the most coveted artifact in the 9 realms. Giants, in particular, sought to steal Mjolnir as a way to disarm Thor and weaken the gods of Asgard. Without his hammer, Thor was significantly less formidable, making him a prime target for those who wished to challenge the god's supremacy. The repeated thefts of Mjolnir often involved intricate plots that showcased not just Thor's might, but also the cunning and trickery of the gods and giants alike. One famous instance, as we discussed earlier, is the story where the giant Thrym steals Mjolnir and demands Freyja as his bride in exchange for its return. The fact that Thor had to resort to cross-dressing to retrieve it highlights the lengths to which the gods would go to regain such an invaluable weapon. These stories serve to emphasize the hammer's importance, not just as a tool of war, but as a symbol of divine power and authority. They also add an element of suspense and adventure to Thor's tales, showing that even the god of... Did you know that Thor had a chariot pulled by goats? Yes, that's right, Thor's chariot was drawn by two goats named Tangrisnir and Tangstar. But these weren't just ordinary goats. They were magical, capable of being killed, eaten, and then resurrected by Thor the next day. This goat-powered chariot is a unique aspect of Thor's mythology, symbolizing both his connection to the common people and his role as a protector of the human world. The goats themselves are also steeped in symbolism. They represent sustenance and the cycle of life and death, which are central themes in Norse mythology. Thor's relationship with his goats is quite interesting. On one hand, they are his loyal companions, but on the other, they are also a source of food, highlighting the dual nature of life and death in the myths. The chariot also serves to demonstrate Thor's mobility and his readiness to rush to the aid of both gods and humans whenever needed. Whether he's battling giants or protecting Midgard, Thor's goat-drawn chariot is an iconic part of his identity. The idea of a god riding across the sky in a chariot pulled by goats might seem strange, but it's a powerful image that encapsulates Thor's role as the tireless defender of the realms. And now, we've reached the weirdest question of all: was Thor once turned into a fish? Believe it or not, yes, Thor was once turned into a fish, but not in the way you might think. This story is lesser known and comes from a mix of old myths and later interpretations. In this tale, Loki had stolen the goddess Idun's apples of immortality, causing the gods to age. To recover the apples, Loki needed to placate the giant who had taken them. To do this, Loki turned Thor into a giant fish to sneak into the giant's lair and retrieve the apples. While in fish form, Thor had to overcome various aquatic challenges, proving that even in the water, he was a force to be reckoned with. The idea of the mighty Thor being reduced to a fish is both comical and bizarre, yet it highlights the transformative nature of the gods in Norse mythology. Thor's willingness to undergo such a change, albeit reluctantly, demonstrates his commitment to the greater good and his willingness to go to any lengths to protect the other gods. This story, though strange, adds another layer to Thor's character, showing that even the god of thunder could be humbled in the pursuit of a noble cause. It's a reminder that in mythology, the gods often found themselves in unexpected situations, and their strength was not just in their physical power, but in their ability to adapt and overcome. And there you have it, 10 weird questions about Thor that show just how strange and fascinating Norse mythology can be. From cross-dressing escapades to chariot-pulling goats, and even being turned into a fish, Thor's adventures are anything but ordinary. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the quirks of the Thunder God, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next mythological exploration. And as always, let us know in the comments which weird question surprised you the most. Until next time, keep those hammers ready and the lightning striking.